Hi, you're listening to Unshackled, Born into Silence. There are stories that live in silence, stories buried beneath hymns, behind closed doors, inside the hearts of those who were never allowed to speak. I was raised in a world where obedience was survival, questioning was rebellion, where music was both forbidden and sacred. At 17, I was excommunicated, cast out, not just from a church, but from my family, my community, my entire identity. This is my story, not to shame, not to destroy, but to reclaim. For anyone who's ever been silenced, shunned, or told they were too much, this is for you. My name is Kevin, and this is Unshackled.
Today, we're continuing our journey into stories of struggle, survival, and transformation. In this episode, we'll hear about Kevin's path through hardship, rebellion, and ultimately, a moment of reckoning that changed everything.
Hi friends and neighbors, thanks for stopping by. Welcome back to our video series. This is our fifth episode of Unshackled, How One Arrest Saved My Life. If you've been following along, thank you. If you are new here, welcome.
Can you tell us about the first time you moved out of your family home? How old were you?
So, I was 17. Me and my brother, one older brother, 2 years older than me, moved into a basement of a family home who offered to help us. They had heard how bad things were at home, and we were not happy. So I talked to my boss, and he knew these people from the same church he was going to. And their house was about 5 miles from the farm, and right near Arberg. I remember we lived mostly off of frozen pizzas and pizza pops and Mr. Noodles, I think. And a lot of Chef Boyardee. I can't say that word. Yeah, a lot of cheap meals and stuff like that. For me, it was the very first taste of freedom. I could do what I want when I wanted, and that was something I didn't even know how to handle. I was chasing the nightlife, the girls and the partying, and smoked weed and all that stuff. Anything to distract myself, because I was still in denial of what was actually happening with all the trauma and, yeah, what I had experienced growing up. So I had no idea how to process it.
What was life like after leaving home? Work, relationships, and trying to find stability.
Well, I was talking on and off with a woman from southern Alberta, and I met her through a friend growing up. And around that time, I lost my job due to some too much partying, I think. And so the job at the pig barns was done. I tried roofing, which was just miserable. I hated it. It was cold and rainy, snowy, and barely any pay anyway at that time. It was around October, I think. And so I quit that pretty quickly and felt pretty done with Manitoba. Everybody was letting me down. I tried going to different churches, all this and that. Tried different friends. Everything just ended up in the same pile. So I wanted something different, and this woman from Alberta convinced me to move out there. And I was young and naive enough to think that I was going to find work easy, which it was not.
How did those early relationships affect the way that you saw yourself and others?
Well, it left me confused and insecure. I didn't know how the real world worked at all. Not even sure I still do. But I was looking for connection, but didn't know how to build that in a healthy way.
What was the move like, leaving Manitoba for Alberta?
Well, this was mid-October, and I didn't have a GPS. Back then, nobody really did. I was definitely, maybe they did have GPSs, but I definitely didn't have the money for it. I know I had a flip phone. So I just memorized the map and the roads to her house in southern Alberta. And I left really early morning before sunrise with, I think, $600 to my name. At first, we stayed in hotels, but the money quickly runs out, as it does. And we lived out of the car for a while. She was also just pregnant with someone else's child, and her parents were not allowing us to live under one roof. That was a big no-no in the Mennonite world. And I couldn't afford rent or deposit. So I ended up trying to sell vacuums in Lethbridge, Alberta, and quickly realized I was no salesman, not for that kind of thing. And after trying to sell my one vacuum, and my boss yelled at me because he couldn't believe I couldn't sell one vacuum. So I just gave up on that idea, and was, after about 3 weeks of living there, I was broke and frustrated. I was being played by the lady I was with, and so instead of moving forward, I went back to old habits back in Manitoba. My dad gave me some money, and off I was back to Manitoba, and just went back to hanging out with old friends and partying and smoking weed and surrounding myself with bad influences.
What was it like moving back in with your parents?
Well, I worked with my dad for about a month. My brother, who had moved out with me, had also come back. What kind of went sour there, I just disappeared and probably didn't even pay rent. I don't remember anymore. Sorry if you guys are watching, if I never did. It was a pretty rough time, but my dad told me to, backtracking. My brother, he told me he never intended to leave the church permanently anyway. He just wanted to see what life was outside of it. So, and that was pretty hard for me to understand. I knew I wanted something different. I just was not going to stay or go back to the church. But again, instead of moving forward, I just slipped into the old habits.
How did growing up in the church shape your view of yourself and the world?
It gave me framework, but also a lot of guilt and confusion. I felt torn between what I was taught and what I wanted for myself.
When your brother said he wanted to go back, how did that affect your own perspective?
It really showed me how different my mindset was from the rest of my family. To me, going back just felt impossible. I had already seen too much, felt too much. I guess my brother just probably hadn't carried the same weight, or maybe he was still in deep denial. Either way, I realized I was in a completely different camp altogether. And for me, the decision was clear. There was never, ever going back. No way.
How did things spiral during that time?
This was late 2008 into 2009. I bounced between jobs, never lasting more than, sometimes a couple days, sometimes a week, a month, but always going back to working with my dad. And I was depressed, angry, couldn't get out of bed some days. I posted all kinds of dark things on Facebook. Those were the early days. And it was my cry for help, but yeah, I had no idea how to cope.
What did depression look like for you day to day?
It was super heavy. I felt paralyzed, hopeless, consumed by anger, bitterness. Even simple little tasks like getting out of bed felt totally impossible.
Did you have anyone that you could talk to about what you were going through?
Not really. The only people that I connected with were other outcasts, guys who felt, the same kind of anger and disillusionment I did. But we didn't process it in healthy ways. We numbed it with partying, drugs, reckless choices. I didn't have anyone positive to lean on. So no one I could really open up to in a constructive way.
You've mentioned vandalizing churches. Can you share what led to that?
Yeah, in the fall I started stealing from the church. Not proud of it. They didn't lock it, and I took food from the kitchen to get by, I guess, and I just justified it because of the pain they had caused me. Really, I was just broke, angry, and feeding my addictions. My parents knew it was me, but never confronted me. I think the whole church knew, but no one said a word. They wanted to keep the peace, but then I got cocky, knowing the church wouldn't press charges, and started vandalizing other churches with friends in similar situations.
What happened the night that you were arrested?
Well, we vandalized another church after scoping it out during a youth event that night prior to what we were about to do. And we brought everything back home, but never sold it. So 2 days later, an officer shows up, and I knew instantly, oh, I'm going to jail. And I'd never been in that situation before. He sat me in the cruiser. Actually, I'll backtrack. I went and hid in my bedroom for a while, and just was hoping that this would all go away. Maybe he was there for another reason. I was praying and just actually contemplating jumping out of my bedroom window, which wouldn't have ended well anyway, considering it was old family friend who was the RC, which is the RCMP for those that don't know. And so he sat me in the cruiser after my friend opened the door, and he's like, "Where's Kevin?" And I knew immediately, so I just went and sat in the cruiser. First denied it for a long time. I didn't want to be a rat. I didn't want to, first of all, get caught. But the more he talked, I knew I wasn't getting out of this one. I knew they had us. And he was kind, told me that I would, like, if I cooperated with him, obviously it would make things a lot easier. And eventually I confessed. I realized, well, I don't really want a criminal record on my name. I was just 18 at that time. and my first actual charge. So he brought me to the town jail, and I spent the night in there. Would highly not recommend, unless you really want to do some deep thinking. That's all you got. But, my dad wouldn't bail me out. He made that very clear to me that wasn't going to happen. And that night gave me a lot of time to reflect. I realized I had two paths. Either keep going down this criminal career path or, smarten up. I knew better. I knew I didn't want that life, so.
After that night in the cell, what steps did you take to change your path?
I started to distance myself from the people I was running with. It wasn't instant, but it was the beginning of my realizing I had to take responsibility for my own life.
Looking back, what do you want people to understand about that time in your life?
Well, obviously, I do not condone what I did, and I'm not saying in any means it was okay. But this is my truth, and if you're feeling the way I felt, I encourage you to explore those thoughts and feelings within yourself. Hurt people. And I was lost, angry, and broken, but that night in the cell kind of forced me to see that I had no choice.
That you had a choice.
That I had a choice.
Who, if anyone, helped you start moving in a better direction after that?
Well, honestly, it was a couple people. My dad, in his own way, I guess, by not bailing me out. That tough love forced me to face the consequences and grow. And then, not long after, my first son came into my life. He's not biologically mine, but I've raised him since he was a baby, and he is every bit as much my son as any of my kids. He saved me, and as well as the rest of my children, they've all saved me in their own ways. But he was the first, the one who stopped me from slipping back into old habits. I really realized I had to step up because, I had taken on this responsibility and I wasn't going to mess this one up. And, I turned my life around for him and I guess my ex-wife. That responsibility, that love gave me purpose when I needed it the most.